Welcome back to those who've been following our podcast, Context for Chaos, and welcome to those who are just now finding us. I'm Vanessa, a psychic, astrologer, and spiritualist.
And I'm Jessica, a curious explorer with a desire to ground spirituality into everyday human chaos. Right now, we're enjoying spontaneous conversations, but we'll soon focus on topics like love, grief, and purpose, exploring these ideas from both a human and spiritual perspective.
We invite you to follow us on your favorite podcast platform, but you're also more than welcome to join in on the conversation and join us over on Substack. Give us your own stories, add your own thoughts, or ask us to focus on a question or an idea that's been on your mind.
Vanessa and I really like to talk to each other, but community conversations are even more exciting, so don't be scared to get involved. Talk to us if you feel compelled, or just listen in. You'll find more information in the bio section if you're curious.
Let's get to talking and unearth this spiritual context from worldly chaos. And welcome back to Context for Chaos. Hello, Jessica.
Hello, Vanessa, and hello, listeners.
We are about to do our next follow-up interview with Corinna, Rosella, and you all got to hear her interview from 2023. That was the last 5 episodes that went out. We had a really great conversation about politics, about neurodivergence, and I'm really excited to catch up more with Corinna. Jessica, do you have anything that you're considering talking to her about or what you'd really like to know about?
I'm really just excited to hear more about community care and herbalism.
All right, let's bring Corinna on. Corinna, this is Jessica. Jessica, this is Corinna.
Hello.
So Corinna, I know you closed your shop in July of last year, but can you tell us a little bit about that shop and where you are now after our last interview?
Yeah, so I ran a shop, an apothecary and mystery school, gallery, metaphysical space in the high desert. I started at the end of 2022 and I closed it last July 2025. And since then, I've really been just transitioning back to working for it's all working for myself, but like transitioning away from like a project that was so large scale and time consuming into something that's like more doable and tangible for me as an individual in these times. So now I have a little it was originally a detached garage. I have like an older house and it's now like a workspace with my herbs, and people can meet me here and like get potions and readings, and I have my art. I like make art here. So it's really special.
And it also sounds extremely freeing.
It's very freeing. Yeah. Yeah.
So you feel more connected to what you're doing, or like more connected to your own energy now? You feel more connected to like how you're doing this?
Yeah, I mean, I did honestly go through, and I'm still kind of in a big period of burnout. I wanted to go back and listen to the interview, but I didn't get a chance to. But I had so many lofty goals and dreams for that space, and so many of them actually came to fruition. And I saw like this vision of community, witchcraft, community herbalism coming to life. But I think really due to like outside circumstances, like the realities of living during the collapse of current systems and the rise of fascism and, multiple genocides, an incoming world war, which, I think a lot of us as astrologers are not shocked to see happen based on, and conscious people, astrologers and conscious people are not shocked to see happen, but also like that doesn't like cool the devastation and the grief of that. I think it was just like being a store owner and having like crazy amounts of bills every month, like between like paying the rent on a shop, the utilities, keeping inventory stocked, having employees, paying employee taxes, paying insurance, like, and then like having to also pay yourself. Like it was just something that felt like Sisyphus with a boulder running up a hill, and like even though we in the shop, there was so much community built and there was so much love for that space. And even now, like I can't leave the house really without seeing someone who tells me how important that space was to them. It's like we live under a capitalist system and small businesses are not supported under a big box system, like a big box supporting system, like one click to buy Amazon, like it's David and Goliath, you know? So it's like, in the end, it was like my level of stress, like led me to like complete nervous system collapse. And I had amazing support systems and like lots of help, and I still couldn't keep it going. So I made the decision to close and to move back to something that's like a little bit more community based, and also so that, you know, I'm focusing more on my work as a visual artist now and a ritual artist, and I have more space to do that because there's really like, you know, when you run a shop, and my goal in the beginning was that I would have enough to hire like a store manager by year 3. And that just wasn't looking like a strong possibility whatsoever, even though I had like great people that would have been great store managers and stuff. Like, you know, if you can't hire a store manager, like if you're owning a shop and you're a tarot reader, astrologer, herbalist, teacher, artist, like you have like 12 full-time jobs in terms of like managing a store, managing schedules, doing client work, teaching classes, running a website, like doing advertising, social media management. And especially in midlife, that is not, you know, maybe when I was like 26 or something, but in midlife during perimenopause, like not, it would take a superhero to manage all that.
Absolutely.
Corinna, what do you mean by ritual artist?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. So I've been an analog photographer for like 15 years, although I don't know. I'm still grappling. I hate titles. I'm like, I practice words and I practice tarot. I'm a practicing artist, but I don't like the noun. But a ritual artist, well, I like to create art that is a spell. And, you know, I'm a flower essence practitioner and I'm an analog photographer. And I feel like those two things, they might not seem related, but to me, they are the exact same practice of like capturing, it's time-based art, it's capturing a moment in time. And that in itself is a ritual that you get to share with other people. So like a lot of the art I make is I use a lot of like pressed flowers in my in photographs. Like I add them to the photographs. I do like collage on the photographs. Oh yeah, I consider my art to be like the practice of making it is time-based, and like the when I go out to take photos, when I make flower essences, it is a ritual. It is like I am capturing something, I'm doing it with the intention, I'm filling my own cup, and that is supposed to be an element of the art. So it's not just like a photograph of something. It's like the way that it was photographed, like the intention when it was photographed. I've gotten really into, I don't know how much you all know about like analog photography, but I've gotten into film souping lately and doing like herbal preparations and flower essences in my film soup. So then my photos were, you know, when I get them developed, they actually have the actual essence of the plants in the photos.
That's so cool. And are you using like corresponding properties to match the tone of the image you're shooting, or you know, like are you sort of like building a monograph of an image in a way?
That would be cool, but it's not that intentional. It's kind of all an experiment.
Cool.
So the last film soup, I did a photo shoot with someone, and right now actually I'm working on a project that has no end goal other than to exist in the world, which is a new thing for me as a type A Capricorn cardinal dominant person who's always kind of struggled with perfectionism and workaholism. I'm really, with my art, it's more like this is just a thing I'm doing and we're going to see the journey that it takes on its own. And so I did a photo shoot yesterday of a friend as Temperance. So I'm doing photo shoots where I'm choosing mostly local people in my community who I think are powerful artists, activists, organizers, witches, and I'm photographing them as tarot archetypes and like elemental archetypes. And yesterday I did a local artist as Temperance at the nearest body of water that we are, Mission Creek. And I was saying to her, like, oh, maybe I'll soup this, but I'm not sure if I'm going to soup it yet, because that's the thing is when you soup film, you never get like the image without the soup on it, because you're destroying, like, film soup is when you put film into boiling water with stuff in it. So you are destroying the film. So it's not like if I don't like the way the soup turns out, I can be like, oh, I just want the original image. Like that image is forever altered. And that's, again, that's like taking a chance. It's a risk. But that's, I think, what art is, and witchcraft. It's all taking a risk. It's all a experiment of faith.
So temperance is the correspondence, if there was one. Like temperance, you have like one intention of, but it's more of a macro level than the micro level. So we are starting from temperance, and whatever I throw in there is going to be, in essence, what it should be, regardless of, if this flower goes with this herb, goes with this thing. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. The last film soup I did, I was in Tucson I got to do a training on politicized somatics. It was really like for me to, after a period of really intense burnout and disabling burnout, but also being called to like hold space for people and feeling the skills to hold space for people in these times. I was like, I need to learn like energy management better. Not that I want to learn a new modality. I'm really happy with the modalities I practice already, but I went to Tucson, and anyway, like, so I went to this amazing training, and then I thought, like, okay, I'm out here. This is a good excuse to do some photography, like film photography. And I took a roll of the saguaro cacti, which are different from the plant friends in the Mojave Desert. And then I souped it in mugwort tea with lemon and salt. You kind of always, that like lemon and salt always gives it a cool vibe. So I did mugwort tea, and that wasn't, for anyone, for y'all, or for anyone listening, mugwort is like a very magical plant. It's ancestral to many parts of the world because there's native species in many places, in many continents. But mugwort is it's like a deeply restorative, deeply like a digestive system healing herb that is also an abortifacient, so can be used, but don't take this information lightly. Like, reach out to me or someone else that knows if you're going to take that route. But it's an abortifacient, so like has been used in that way for centuries. And it's also a dream work herb that kind of like opens up portals of intuition. But what I love about mugwort is that, unlike some other herbs like blue lotus, which is another herb that I really would love to do a film soup of, mugwort is very body centered, while blue lotus or other dream work herbs are like very much like in like water element, like Pisces, like in the sky. And mugwort is like in the body. Mugwort is very like, I'm in my body, like I'm experiencing visions, I'm experiencing like intuitive portals opening, but I'm very much doing it inside my body and not like in some kind of dreamscape like blue lotus might be.
But mugwort is also for dreaming, right? Or that it can be used for dreaming.
Absolutely. But it's a very grounding herb. And I think there's a difference between working with a grounding herb that like opens your intuition and working with a herb that's more about like, I think of it very much as like Capricorn versus Pisces. Like Capricorn is more mugwort related because it's a earthy herb. It's more like related to earth as an element. Pisces is like no boundaries, as you guys know, like no boundaries, like collective consciousness. And sometimes that's like, sometimes you want to open your intuition, but you want to have boundaries with it. So that's what I love about mugwort.
Yeah, and with a grounding energy, it's maybe more about using what it is that you got, or maybe like the dream, like you're inducing a dream in order to see the symbolism, in order to put it on the earth, or in order to work with it, where like a Pisces is like, I just dreamed it, and that's just a part of the dream, and I don't need to like put it into practice or make sense of it. It might be a part of my art now, and nobody knows why I'm drawing this thing, because I don't know why I'm drawing this thing. It's just came to me in a vision. Is that kind of like a good way of sort of separating somebody who's grounded, who's in like, going into a more dreaming state or trance state than someone who lives there?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of ways to think about it. I think about this a lot, but I'm really into like protection magic, boundary magic with plants, and mugwort is a boundary herb. It is an herb for boundaries. It is, and it's many herbs that are very antiviral, and digestive bitters and abortifacients also tend to be related to boundaries and protection. We can dream and open our intuitive portals, but like having a sense of purpose that's realistic for our life. Because if I think about like in my astrological, like elemental magic practice, I think about like, and I'm probably a little bit biased because I'm very Capricorn. I think like earth-based magic, when you're working with the element of earth, when you're working with earth-related plants, which all plants are all elements, but plants tend to correspond to certain planetary bodies, which correspond to elements. And if you're working with like mugwort or like a earth kind of related or a Saturn related plant, you're thinking about the constraints of your own body. So like I'm creating a vision that I hold on to for my growth and of course, like our growth isn't selfish. It's not contained within us. It trickles outwards. Whereas like, Pisces archetypes can be very martyr related, and they can be very like, it's my responsibility to take on everything. Like I have no boundaries with my empathy. For me, Blue Lotus is very much an herb that makes me feel my empathy like towards other people in like very intense ways, which can be helpful sometimes, but also, empathy can be weaponized, or it can be harmful, or it can be overwhelming. And I think like Blue Lotus, for example, like, yeah, if you're creating something, if you like want to do something for the collective, where does that start? It starts in your body. So I feel like it starts in your body. If it's starting with like, I am here to save the world, like, where are you really going to go with that? Like it's going to have to come back to your body at some point. It's going to have to come back to you as an individual.
That seems like a good point to ask you more about politicized somatics.
Yeah, what is that exactly? I'm very curious.
Yeah, I'm not a somatic practitioner.
Mm-hmm.
I'm someone who tries to, I was someone when I was younger that if somebody was like, where do you feel that in your body? I would like get really angry. I'd be like, stop this. Like, shut up or whatever. And I think so I'm not an expert on this, and I actually hate the word expert in all ways, but I'm definitely not an expert in politicized somatics. But I feel that it is a way to look at how systems of oppression and systems of harm and trauma first exist within our bodies and then move outwards towards our actions, intentions, words, and sort of like being with that and healing that in order to like heal, to be right with our intentions, actions, and words.
Jessica and I were just recently talking about, I think, how a lot of people view spirituality, and it can be very Piscean. It's all away from me. It's all out there. It's all, I'm praying to go somewhere else. If I know that I've grown in my spirituality, it's because I don't let anything affect me, that kind of stuff. And it's not really a realistic way of looking at it, and it's not a somatic way of looking at it. And you've said it multiple times, like even if you got angry about if somebody had approached you about how it felt in your body, it clearly is important to you to know what's going on in your body. How would you say, herbalism, or because that's ingesting something, or, taking photographs of physical things, how do you see that as your spiritual practice, or like a spiritual way of connecting to the world? Because I think a lot of people don't have enough ways that they feel that they can connect, and that it is a valid, legitimate, and oftentimes satisfying way to connect.
Wow, so much to say to that. So I'm really interested, and I think I've been seeing more people talk about grief work and grief ritual, and that's been something that came into my life years ago because of loss and trying to move through loss and trying to survive loss and make meaning of senseless loss. And now I think we're collectively dealing with so much of that, whether it's affecting us personally or if we're watching it happen. And a kind of like Pisces theme would be like, is there a difference if we are, if we are highly sensitive people? It is personal to us, even if it's not happening to us. And I think plants are these ancient beings that we coexist with. They are our familiars, they are our ancestors, they are our neighbors, they are our friends. And, I was, during my time with my shop, I taught a class series called Magical and Medicinal Plants of the Mojave Desert. And it was I was really hesitant to teach that class because I was like, I don't know that much. Like people would ask me and I'd be like, I don't know that much. I'm not an expert. Like I hate being called an expert. I hate when people are like, you should do. And I'm like, but I'm afraid that someone's going to be like, you don't know all the facts. And then I realized that I do know a lot just from my experience and being on this land and being conscious and learning things. And, my interesting experience when I taught that class was how many people that grew up I didn't grow up in the desert. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, and people that came to the class who had lived in the Mojave Desert their whole life. And they were like, how many times have I walked by a Palo Verde tree or a desert willow or a apricot mallow? And I didn't even think about it. And it's like, I grew up in the redwood forest. How much did I think about the redwoods? We culturally, and this is part of colonization, is to separate us from the plant and animal bodies in our communities. And I believe that this cuts us off from our emotions, from our bodies, from our feelings. It cuts us off from grief. And this is politicized inherently because if we think about what Israel is doing, for example, if they had properly grieved the trauma and the violence that they experienced, would they be reenacting this and colonizing? And if ICE, the people that are joining ICE, if they had properly grieved, whatever experience, working class, loss of privilege, the whatever, would they be enacting violence on other people, on people that are more marginalized? And I think that part of colonization is being cut off from the grieving process. And I think going back to herbalism, like plants are resilient, they're adaptable. Unfortunately, moving into the sixth mass extinction, which we are already part of and is at this point, there is very little to do to reverse it, if not nothing to do to reverse it. And the radical acceptance of having to accept that and like live in these times, we will lose many plants forever. I don't know forever, like maybe they will come back. One of the metaphors that I heard in the politicized somatics class that I really hung on to was ecologists studying the site of Chernobyl and how now it's been locked off from humans for 40 years or whatever. And now there's all these plants that have never, plants and animals. It's like a very rare habitat full of plant life because there's no people there to like mess it up, So it's like the earth will heal itself, but the earth is evicting us. And, whether, how long that'll take, like what the people in power are going to do to swiftly expedite that process. We're just sitting by and doing what we can. I'm getting into really big concepts, but like on a body level, on a level with herbalism, it's like we have to learn to adapt. Some of us will survive. Some people will survive. There will be life on Earth, and the plants are there as our friends and allies. So like connecting with plant medicine, like if you need support for your nervous system, for the systems of the body that are heavily affected by climate change, the respiratory tract, like the immune system, like the endocrine system. Working with herbs is building resilience in the human body. And it reminds us that like the earth is our ancestor, that plants are our ancestor, that like we should be standing up for them, that we should be making choices in our life and taking action that supports their survival. There's also, I think, people are really disempowered. And I understand, I fight that every day, like my own disempowerment all the time. And people feel really hopeless right now. And that's fair. You can't live there. You can visit that place and you can't live there. You got to like build a home on some fertile soil where you can grow stuff. And I recommend visiting the hopelessness. I don't think we should levelate away the hopelessness and the anger and the grief, but we need to find ways to also like ground ourselves in trust and ground ourselves in hope.
And this also sounds like wisdom is what you're connecting to, whereas knowledge usually depicts an expert, where you probably have a lot of knowledge, but you may not feel like you have enough. I would say that wisdom is what you tap into, which is just the experience and seeing the result of experience. And then recognizing that we've had millennia of experience through trees, through plants, so we're following their life cycle. We're following their medicinal contributions rather than saying, I have an answer beyond it. I have a connection to it. So I just think that's very interesting.
Yeah, your resistance to adopting the title of expert makes perfect sense if you source your wisdom from the environment around you.
If somebody's like, I'm an expert on this, I'm like, hey, you choose the words that work for you. If it's like a white guy with a lot of money, I'm like, questioning that. But I, in a way, I'm like, it's a very colonial idea to be an expert on something. And classic saying that's like, the more you know about something, like the less you think you know, and the less you know, like the more you think you know, or whatever that saying is. I'm butchering it, but
no, I get it. And I resist that title as well. I don't know if anybody's called me that, but it does feel like I would resist it.
I call you that all the time.
Maybe that's why I was like, when do I resist it? Oh, when Jessica says, no, you are the expert. And I'm like, I appreciate that because you're seeing me as somebody who takes this seriously, at least. But what I think wisdom is also a dance. It's not, knowledge is kind of a categorization and, mathematics, and this equals this, and that's what it should be. But when you actually are in your apothecary or you're doing your soup, the result might be different, or something might come out of it that you weren't expecting. And it's allowing the intuitive process. It's allowing the world to speak to you instead of you always speaking to it. And that does require a certain amount of knowledge because you might not have picked it up if it was giving you something that you couldn't put together yourself.
Intuitive wisdom.
Yeah, exactly. Like I feel like you're the wise woman, or a wise woman, a wise person, however you would want to categorize yourself, not labeling exactly, but to more broad, like make it more broad than even just the expert. I am a person who experiments. I like to know more and more. So my experiments become more, and not even refined, but more and more discovery processes where somebody else might not see that thing because I've looked at it so deeply so many times. I do it over and over again.
Yeah. And I also have what you're saying totally makes sense. Oh, and the other thing, I feel like maybe the last time we did the interview was probably around the time that the North Node went into Aries. And I feel like that was a really potent time for learning about leadership. And I had to learn a lot about leadership. And Libras are not good at being lead, because you get that if your Libra vibe is like, let's do what you want to do, but you're the one with the structural power. That's not cute. That doesn't go over well. If you're like, I'm going to get along with everyone, I'm fine. But then you're like gossiping about people, which, even if you're intending to not do it maliciously, like it doesn't come off as authentic. So like authenticity, I think, is like a thing that we are not encouraged to do, but like we really need to.
Absolutely. I'm curious, like Jessica and Corinna, herbs for today, herbs for today's anxieties, especially like what you said, like we're literally entering, we're all calling it World War III. I'm not sure if that's, what we'll label it in history, but this is a really anxiety inducing time. I mean, maybe we're not being personally impacted as much as the Middle East because we're not getting bombed, but we are all feeling more responsible than any other time because we have social media, because we have a lot of information, because we want to have more of a say in how things go. So I'm curious, like, if I know, Corinna, I'm sure you know some, and if Jessica, you know some about any herbs that you think people should be looking into right now to kind of help us with our anxieties, because we can't do anything beyond vote or beyond community coming together and protesting. Like, it's really like they kind of tie our hands as citizens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that, I teach a class called Folk Herbalism for Self and Community Care, and it was at the shop, and now I do it online. And we just did our segment on grief and heart medicine. And I really feel like, nervous system medicine, like nervines and adaptogens, which are good for regulating stress, those are really great. But the specific experience of like showing up for community, building capacity within ourselves that's realistic with boundaries, I think is like cardiac herbs and cardiac medicine. So you think about like motherwort, linden, hawthorn, rose,
Hmm.
peach leaf is something I recommended to someone recently, especially like motherwort and rose and peach leaf, very cooling to the body. So like if you're, anger is a response often to grief. And anger is not bad, obviously, but we have to channel it in ways that feel appropriate. Linden flower is another one that I didn't just say, but linden flower, these herbs can make us feel like, and sometimes that can be extremely painful, that experience. Like, back when I was a younger me, like less self-aware, less regulated, back in the day when people would be like, where do you feel in your body? And I'd be like, I hate you is where I feel it in my body. I couldn't work with a lot of cardiac herbs because they made me feel really angry. And I would be like, why does this, like Damiana, for example, I would be like, why does people say it's an aphrodisiac? It's supposed to make you feel good. It's supposed to like make you excited, like sexually or like emotionally or whatever, because aphrodisiac does not just mean sexually, it also means like open-hearted and like emotionally good and like not depressed. And I would just feel like irritable, annoyed, angry, on edge, and really like, someone at the time was like, well, maybe you need to do some work on your heart. And I was like, whatever. Yeah, that's woo or whatever. And it was true though. It was like, I work with cardiac herbs now and they feel really good. So it's like, I think cardiac herbs can be, I tell my students this, and anyone listening, like, don't take this like too literally. Like, they're a little bit psychedelic in a way, not in the way that you're going to like zone out and like see stuff and like colors, you're not going to see like trails or whatever, but they're psychedelic in that they really open up something in you that shows you what you need to heal. So like taking a cardiac herb, like a heart opening herb, like we store so much in our heart. Like we store our fears, we store our trauma, we store a lot of pain. And if there is some blockage there, a cardiac herb might kind of bring out a defense mechanism, like a fight response or something. But we have to go there to get, to a better place. Like there isn't, the only way out is through. You can't just like avoid the hard stuff. Unfortunately, like again, the current system that we live in wants to tell you that go work a 9-to-5 job, pay your mortgage, have 2 kids, and you will be fine. And then you'll retire at 55. That is not a reality that exists anymore. And, we have to feel our feelings. I have 2 boomer parents who are in their transitionary period out of this world. And I'm having a lot of conversations with them about like grief and heart work and stuff. And they're just very like, I don't want to do that. And I'm like, okay. And so, a lot of people don't want to do it, especially that generation. They didn't want to do it. So look where we are at. But yeah, the too long don't read cardiac herbs.
Yeah. Linden is a great one. I'd experience the same responses to the heart herbs, but a linden was a nice a nice introduction, like a gentle movement into the heart space.
Yes, I would say that about linden also. Linden is not as like hawthorn can be really intense. Damiana can be intense, but like some of them are very, very mind altering in a lot of ways. And then linden is just kind of like a gentle friend.
Mm-hmm. It smells so gentle too. From a more beginner standpoint, my go-tos are chamomile. Like on the regular, chamomile as a nervine, just to soothe the whole system. Chamomile is a great nervine that just bolsters that whole like digestive and like the on a body level anxiety. And then milky oats for looping thoughts. Lots of like space anxiety above the head.
Milky oat. I've never heard of that. I don't know anything about the herbal realm. This is fascinating to me.
Yeah, milky oats are, you can only take them as a tincture. You cannot take them as a tea, because if you take them as a tea, that means they're dried out and they are not secreting a milky fluid anymore. So that's oat tops. I have this conversation with people because they're like, I'm drinking a tea of milky oats. And I'm like, you are not.
No, don't do that.
You are drinking a tea of oat tops, because once you dry them, they're oat tops and they have different effects on the body. But when you tincture the green oat tops in the 1 week of the year, which now is becoming very precarious due to climate change, and they're actually going to be secreting. But when the week that they're secreting, you have to tincture them. And then there's a very specific compound within them that helps with racing thoughts, specifically with racing, looping thoughts, irritability. But it doesn't so much make you relax. Like milky oats aren't really that relaxing. Oat tops are very relaxing.
It's also just so interesting how many things one plant can offer you in different states, you know, like.
Yeah. Oh, you want to talk about dandelion?
Yeah. Right. Like that's, yeah, or even I think some herbs are different, or they have different properties when they first push through the soil, as opposed to when they've matured. Is that right? And then how you.
Oh yeah, like a springtime raspberry leaf.
Wow.
The budding raspberry plant before she gets spiky, that's the most potent medicinal phase for it.
Wow. It's so crazy. I mean, like, just to reiterate, it's also just amazing how much intelligence is available to us, even if no human being were to ever walk the earth. You know what I mean? It's like we are literally just learning what is already there. And it's like a discovery process of what's already there. And I think colonialism and capitalism, they keep us in this idea of, you know, the casualties or the destruction that's all necessary for progress, right? But all of our progress is built off of what's already been here. Like, you know, it's not even like our technology is literally built off of everything from the earth. There's not a single thing that we have, not even the computer, our internet, all of that is from sourcing from like the earth, you know? So it's very important to to understand that we are all we are is the earth. There's nothing else.
Didn't someone just figure out how to make batteries out of table salt for electric vehicles? 40% cheaper production because they figured out how to use salt instead of lithium.
See, and this is the other thing. That's what capitalism does too. Exactly. It stops these other ways of running things, because oil is what keeps our countries in sort of alignment with each other. You know, it's like I control something that everybody needs, but if somebody comes up with something that, it's like, honestly, it's kind of like vaccines, or like the polio vaccine, where the guy was like, everybody should have this. There's no patent on this. There should be no child that has to suffer from this. It kind of feels like something like that, salt, or like whatever, all the things that people invent that we don't completely put into practice or really throw our money and material resources towards, because it's not about creating a more sustainable way of functioning. It's about power, period. You know?
Yeah.
So that's also like what you said, Corinna, way earlier, is our disconnection, or what maybe we don't realize, why we don't realize we connect to nature, or to, you know, just simply medicinal qualities of life that are just around us, because it's more about what is the most flashy or powerful thing that I can obtain. And to say that I'm connected to something, or that it has more power than me, is scary in our ideology. And so our spirituality usually has to be this big, you know, heaven, or this openness, this trance states, or, you know, all these things that they're untouchable, unreachable, without, you know, kind of losing yourself in your body. But this is actually having to connect and tend to and care about what is physically available and lives alongside of us, you know? And that's just not the structure of how we've made society. And it's hard to feel safe being equal to something, if not being less powerful and having to use the resources that we have around us, instead of being like, I'm a big bad human and none of this stuff would be here without me. Yeah, you nobody else needs this but us. Nothing else needs this but us. There's no other species that needs Wi-Fi. Like nothing. Like, so it's like, who really is, who is this need for? What is this for? It's only for us. So I think that's where it's also hard for people to realize that that's a connection to spirituality, because it's not something that's like bigger than us. It is bigger than us, but we don't see it like that.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people don't even, know what spirit, they organized religion is, this is, I won't start like another huge topic, but it is like, what does that mean? It's community, really. Like the people that I know that like go to a more like standard church, what they go to it for the community. Like they might not say it that way, but I know that they're doing that for community. And that's what our spirituality is supposed to do, is like build our capacity to be with one another.
And on top of that, it totally talks to your point about grief. Because honestly, my best friend, when her father passed away, one of the most beautiful things I ever heard was, she was like, I didn't have to do anything. Everybody a part of that church did everything. They brought so much food to our house that we couldn't even store all of it. They made sure that every single traditional thing that was supposed to happen happened. All we did was show up. They had speeches ready. They had the plot ready. They had everything ready. And that's what I think a lot of what religion is for too, is to deal with the fact that we're all going to die, And so in that community, it allows this power in numbers of, I can sustain an emotional or spiritual connection in a way that I don't have to be alone in it. If I feel depleted, or if I feel like I can't connect, I can go to my community and they can connect for me, and they can remind me of this connection. And then when we pass away, I'm not stuck having to figure out how to grieve and deal with burying my loved one. I don't have to think about the $4,000 or $5,000 it takes to do this, and also lose somebody, And I think that's like the beauty of spirituality is that we're all here for a short amount of time. And that's really the big boss of this situation, is what is it how do you feel while you're here? And who have you surrounded yourself with that makes it easier to be here?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that kind of brings me to like, I'm in midlife right now. I'm like going through like the hormonal changes. And I always had like a lot of goals my whole life. I was like, I want to do this. I always like thought I would write a book or whatever. Maybe I still will. I'm not dead yet. But now it's like, when I ask myself, what do I want to do with the rest of my time on this earth? I want to grow trees.
Ooh, I love that.
So I planted a bunch of like native trees on my property, which I'm very, very blessed to have my own property, and I'm really looking forward to the process of, I don't know how long the trees make me want to stay here for the rest of my life. But I'm like, if I get to spend the next 20 years or however long I live watching trees grow, and like watching trees that I planted grow, I'm satisfied with that, because goals and desires oftentimes are reflections of capitalist ideas, and also like the way other people see us. Like I had to like face one of my biggest fears, which it was being seen as a failure when I closed my shop, which I now do not care about. I'm like, I don't see myself as a failure. I think that closing my shop was actually I think it was a massive success to like have something for 2.5 years that played such a vital role in community, and to let it go before I became so bitter that I couldn't show up and be my authentic self because I was so burnt out. But the natural world has no ego. Like the natural world has no idea of success and failure. Obviously it's not, maybe you could say it's a failure if a plant dies, but also maybe that's just how long it was supposed to be here,
Absolutely. And how is anything a failure when it's just an expression?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's also the beauty of how many plants there are. They aren't reflecting on how long they stayed.
I think of every greenhouse seed tray I've started in the springtime. The number of transplants that actually make it, or the number of seeds that even sprout.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Corinna, we are going to wrap this up. Thank you so much for coming back on. It was awesome to talk to you last time. It was awesome to talk to you this time. And who knows, maybe we'll have you back on if you're open to it.
Always.
Thank you so much. It was a delight to talk to you today.
Thanks for having me on. This is really great.
Yes, we will let you go on your merry way.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Corinna.
Take care.
Thank you for joining us. And until next time, as above, so below, blessed be.